Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Flash, issue number 218 from November 1972. I believe it's 1972. I'm going to continue on reviewing these flashes because while the A stories are not continuing, the B story, the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, that story is continuing. So I'm going to focus my DC reviews on this run. We see the cover here. It looks like it's from, it could be, I'm thinking it's Irv Novak. I thought for a moment maybe it was Carrie Bates. I don't think it looks like Carrie Bates. Some of the drawings are a little sharp. It's kind of it's a good cover, but it's one that doesn't age well because it looks very insensitive to, say, an individual having a mental episode, and people around them are just laughing at him, and that was something that was pretty common when I was a kid. Is that there was I guess the mental hospitals, they were kind of like releasing a lot of patients, and there were a lot of nutcases on the street, and people would make fun of them, and it wasn't right, but it did happen a lot. And this is what you see on this cover, because they're either laughing at him or just ignoring him or just looking at him like a freak as he's having a mental episode. He doesn't know who he is, and he's asking for help. So the main story is The Flash of 1,000 Faces. So we go into the splash page. The splash page basically summarizes what we saw on the cover. Kind of gives us an idea of the story ahead. We see the Flash. He's racing around, very confused as to basically his identity, who he is. He apparently lost his memory, and he didn't bother to take off his mask or anything. So it's really kind of bothering him at this point. I'll say the creative team is Carrie Bates. He wrote it. It's a typical Carrie Bates story. There's some ridiculousness in it. The art is by Irv Novak, so it's a very professional art job. Irv was DC's like house style guy at the time. So this is a very well drawn issue. And it was edited by Jules Schwartz. I didn't really see any editing problems, but some of the language that Carrie Bates uses is kind of odd. For example, on the splash page here, he's talking about how Flash is a superhero who is idolized by millions and hated by those who just want to profit from crime. He's a symbol of law and order, a reason for the hopeless to keep on hoping, the poor and the underprivileged to keep on striving. Really, I mean, Barry is a member of the Central City Police Department. He is upholding the establishment. He's not this anti-establishment. He's not this social crusader, because the people he's supposed to be protecting, the system he's a part of and that he supports, is causing that. If that makes any sense. So anyway, I'm going to get off that tangent. Going to look in The Flash of 1,000 Faces. So the story opens up with, I believe, Barry and Iris, and they're testing out this new car. And it's an electric car. So this is sort of the Tesla, I guess about maybe 40, 50 years earlier. So even back then, people, had an idea of cars being electric. And of course, the concern is about the environment as to why they would want electric cars. But they're just concerned whether Detroit can mass produce this. Then it turns out the two of them, during this test run, they have to stop because there's a parade. And it's a parade of Scotsmen. The guys with the bagpipes and the kilts, which kind of look like dresses to everyone else. So, for some reason, someone was feeling a little Scottish pride during this story. I don't know whether it was the artist who just drew these guys or Carrie Bates. So anyway, it also, there's a news report that there was a bank robbery and that one of the Scotsmen in the parade was the culprit in pulling off the bank job. So, Iris and Barry, for some reason, are very concerned about this. They realize that maybe one of those guys in that parade pulled off the job. Barry activates his ring, so his Flash costume comes out. And then he outfits himself as the Flash, and he goes into action, kind of going back to that parade. However, this time the Flash comes across one lone parade Scotsman, and it looks like he's carrying a large sack of money. So it's obvious that this is the guy the Flash is looking for. The Flash notices something about the sound waves that the Scotsman is emanating with his magic pipe, but the Flash looks like he may not be affected or not. And then suddenly, he gets out of that, but nevertheless, he goes into his kind of whirlpool effect as he spins around and around, and this causes the disguise that the true villain of this story has on, and it's the Pipe Piper, who's one of the Flash's main villains. The Flash had an unusually deep bench in terms of his rogue gallery. He, outside of probably Batman, he probably had the best villains of all the heroes. I think that's why the Flash was able to survive for so long. Because I believe the comic ended in '85, I saw. I think what happened, Carmine Infantino was talking about suing DC for the rights to the character, and DC decided to kill off the Flash so they can kind of stop this lawsuit by Infantino about who truly owns the Flash. So, sometimes, characters die by corporate edit. Same way the Flash is confronting the Pipe Piper. He would not make it as a Marvel villain. He's okay for a DC villain. And it turns out the Piper has set up a larger microphone to broadcast a particular frequency that he wants emanated. And then the Flash goes into action, and he kind of pulls this lame maneuver where he basically says, I'm going to trip you over, Flash. But the Flash's mental acuity, his intelligence suddenly drops. He's thinking in a very sluggish state, and he actually is tripped by the Pipe Piper because his mental reflexes are so slow. So the Flash crashes into basically some trash cans. He's taking it really hard on the head here. He's definitely going to have a concussion. Now the Pipe Piper had the Flash dead to rights. If the Piper truly wanted to finish off the Flash, that was the moment to do it. But he decides he wants him to suffer. So I'm just going to leave the Flash as he is so he can suffer in the worst way possible. So he's kind of like, he's a very dramatic guy, the Pipe Piper. And we find out he's also a little bit suicidal, because it turned out that the particular frequency that did this to the Flash, this is something that the Pipe Piper was looking for and studying for years. And he put his theory about a particular frequency that can incapacitate a creature to the test, and he's doing it with the cobra. And as the cobra is listening to the music, the whole thing about the snake charmer, the piper pulls his hand right in front of the cobra, daring the cobra to bite him, knowing how fast the cobra's reflexes are. However, the cobra's reflexes are so slow, the piper easily gets his hand out of the way. So the piper basically was risking his life on his scientific belief about this frequency. So this is a guy who when you say all in, he's all in. So he's talking about how he's going to use this frequency against the Flash. Okay, turn the page. I'm not really interested in these ads. Okay, we see the Flash. He recovered. He's in the garbage because he got hit in the alleyway. He can't quite figure out what was going on, and he doesn't remember who he is. So he's having an identity crisis, and everything he's trying to do to answer that question, who am I, his brain fights against it. So he's mentally trained. He's mentally been trained to foil himself, basically. So he's having this huge identity crisis because he knows everything else except his own identity, and he's being mentally stopped from examining that. I guess, wow, that is some drug trip. If you take and you can't remember who you are. However, we go back to Iris. She's still in that experimental Tesla from 1973. However, it looks like she's lost control of it. So she's driving recklessly on the streets. The pedestrians and other drivers are pissed off at her. However, Flash is going after her because after the runaway car. That's probably his main concern. Iris is thinking to herself that something shorted it and she lost control of the computer. Again, something that's common in Teslas. So anyway, the Flash runs ahead of the test car. He uses his arm as kind of a fan, and then he stops the experimental car right there. And let's see what happens. The Flash is aware of who she is, but he addresses her as Mrs. West, which is her maiden name before she married Barry. And of course, Iris noticed this, that he didn't address me as Mrs. Allen. He addressed me as Mrs. West, and he gets a bit chauvinistic with her, saying that, this car is way too powerful for a woman. Always remember, it's a man's job to drive. So that was such a common belief when I grew up as a kid. Remember, in 1974, a woman actually could not have a credit card unless it had her husband's name or her father's name on it. And that was, 1974. So anyway, Iris is concerned about Flash's interactions because, on one hand, obviously she understands that Flash sort of has to be a bit distant with her in public. But on the other hand, he kind of did that chauvinistic insult, which Iris rightly calls as uncalled for, and he felt that he was being a little too cold with her. And then the thing with the name, not calling her Mrs. Allen. Turns out the Flash is still going through this identity crisis. He doesn't know what to do, since again he has a mental block about removing his own cowl. So he goes to the police station. He says, "Can I look through your mugshots? for whatever superhero reason. The police, oblige the Flash because in their eyes, the Flash is not a vigilante. He's kind of a separate rogue agent protecting the establishment. So anyway, so the Flash goes through all of the photographs of all the missing people. So he wasn't one of those persons. Then he started to ask about the criminals, the criminal mugshots, because he's thinking, hey, I might be a criminal. Again, he's being manipulated. He's manipulating himself into thinking this way. It's kind of funny, though. So anyway, he's going through all these photographs, violating these people's constitutional rights. Well drawn panels here. Flash still can't figure out what's going on as to who he is. He notices another frequency wave being emanated from one of the towers, and he feels that somehow this broadcast that only he can sense is somehow affecting him. And turns out he's kind of right. He feels that once the transmissions and the mental effect that it's having on his brain will also end. But then the device blows up. It blows up right in front of the Flash, and Flash is knocked unconscious. And then there's a voice to the side, just kind of gloating that the Flash was basically booby-trapped here. And we see it's the Pied Piper. He's quite proud of himself of this murder. He made it very clear that he was out to murk the Flash. So and we know he's a little bit suicidal, and he's a bit sadistic. So this guy, even though he looks really ridiculous, he's quite the sadist. However, as the Pied Piper is removing the cowl, we see the Flash's face continuously changes. So he's using his ability to vibrate his molecules at high speed to kind of change his face. Let's give the illusion of his face. Then as the Pied Piper is distracted and the Flash recovers, he leaps out of Piper's at least arm length. So he's away from the Piper. Piper is still fine because he's like, I still have my super frequency, and I can just still blast you to death. However, the Flash is able to get some debris thrown in the Pied Piper's way. He's knocked unconscious by an awful lot of rubble. This guy is going to be bruised. So anyway, the Pied Piper, he's handcuffed and taken away. The police, who really didn't have to do very much in this story, says, "Hey, thanks for doing it again." And he asks him about that missing person. So the police sergeant asks the Flash about that missing person he was looking for earlier, which was himself. And he said, "No, don't worry, I found him." And it turned out that Barry's office is right along the hallway. So he just saw his name there, and that immediately jarred his memory, and it broke that mental block that the Pied Piper's frequency gave him. So anyway, things kind of wrap up here. Barry and Iris are sitting down romantically in their living room. It's a very common situation you would see, anywhere at home in a marriage. And Barry's explaining that the reason why he was so chauvinistic was that he had to fool himself into not thinking that, you were his wife. So it's just mental gymnastics. So you kind of they tie everything up. Iris turns off the light, and they're going to get some McLovin. And, they're all right with each other. Underneath is a in-house ad for Superman. think I don't know what issue it is. They don't say. It's a good looking cover. So I probably would have bought that. Also, there's a new issue of Superboy out in August and another Action Comics. So yeah, there were always Superman comics on the newsstand when I was a kid. So before I go to Green Lantern, Green Arrow, I'm going to take a look at the letters page. And the letters page is about issue number 215. It's one by Len Wein. So I guess this is before Carrie Bates really had that long run. I think him and Len, I think Bates and Wein would kind of alternate. They really liked Len Wein's story. And so, in the second one, yeah, it also praises the artwork. So yeah, so so he was happy with what he saw. Here's the second letter, and kind of praising Len Wein a bit. Yeah, so he also liked the issue. Here, the third letter, they mentioned Green Lantern a little. It's kind of the B character. Talking about Carrie Bates and Len Wein. These letters are really well written. These are like 25-year-old grad students writing these letters. Next one is really long, but it's really detailed too. It basically talking about the writing with what Neal Adams and Denny O'Neal are doing, and going on, talking about the relevancy. It's a weird letter to kind of summarize. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so I'm gonna go into Green Lantern, Green Arrow. It starts off where the last issue, the last part of the story ended, where the bomb had gone off in this apartment building that Green Lantern had stopped a few moments earlier, and it turns out to be quite a powerful explosion. And the only reason that Green Lantern was able to get a shield around everyone was that the guy said, "We planted a bomb," and then that kind of that warning was what saved them. So showing a little bit of limitations that the heroes have. And if you see the Green Lantern, he's able to evacuate himself and the three thugs. However, he's not particularly nice with them. So what he does is that he takes 3 garbage cans and he basically smashes them over their heads. So they kind of cage themselves there. So these guys got a concussion when he put them in here. Of course, it's understandable. The building that they planted the bomb in had people in it. So yeah, he's not going to be sympathetic to these creeps. So Green Lantern, he uses his powers to keep the structure upheld. He doesn't quite know what the situation is, so he's kind of going into this rescue blind. And he knows he has to wait for the fire crews. However, this is putting a great strain on him. And we could see, the Green Lantern starting to weaken as he's trying to uphold this structure. So again, this is something you would see in Marvel, where there's a limitation. Where in previous, before this run, he's probably holding that building up with no issues. So anyway, Green Lantern, he's on the verge of collapse. However, the firemen arrived and they work on putting out the fire. So he doesn't have to hold the structure as long since they're going to get the fire out fairly quickly. Beautifully drawn art here. We see Green Lantern. He's just laid out at this point in front of the fire hydrant, just absolutely exhausted. And everyone's working to get the fire out, which is the most important thing. There's no one there to kind of like pat Green Lantern's shoulder. However, Black Canary shows up. She does that, and Canary lets her name's Diane. Canary lets Green Lantern know, she hasn't heard any news about their friend Oliver Queen and what had happened with him. Both of them are very concerned about this. Green Lantern had came across all his valuable equipment destroyed. Black Canary got a message from him saying, "I'm leaving civilization forever, and please don't look for me." So obviously they don't know exactly what happened. But since his apartment is in this neighborhood, they're going to keep investigating in the neighborhood, thinking they might get a clue there. So anyway, they both talk about this, and they both agree that they should stick around his neighborhood. Meanwhile, see the next page, we see Green Arrow, or Oliver Queen. He's flying this really cool airplane, and I think it was an airplane back when he was basically a green Batman with bows. Back when he was just basically, when he was originally created, he was just simply a Batman ripoff. And then it wasn't until the Denny O'Neal and Neal Adams era that this guy showed this kind of growth, where all that money that made life so easy for superheroes was suddenly gone, and how he had to kind of deal with poverty and all that. But for some reason, they sell it as, he just happened to keep this one thing. I have a hard time believing that he kept that thing and was paying its maintenance, considering the rest of the way he lived. He was a guy who was complaining about having to have, Chinese food every week because he had so little money. But at the same time, he's spending all this money to maintain an airplane that his current lifestyle he doesn't need. Anyway, so that's plot convenience. But nevertheless, it's cool imagery. Oliver Queen. He's reminiscing about what had driven him to this. So again, this is sort of Marvel-like storytelling. You reference what had previously happened, and it was about Green Arrow, who was put in a life and death situation, and he kills the person who was firing on him. This wasn't like a Hans Greedo thing, like who fired first. It was clear the sniper fired first. And Green Arrow did not intend to kill this guy. He was injured, and it just simply happened. I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier. But Oliver Queen is devastated mentally by this. He's haunted by it. He decides he's going to crash his airplane. Now, he's not going to be in it. So he's not kind of doing a James Dean here. And he ejects into the wild. Right, that guy, what was his name? Christopher McCandless, the guy who died in Alaska in that abandoned school bus. So this is sort of Oliver Queen going into the wild. And he lets the airplane go and crash. Apparently he doesn't really think it's going to hurt anyone. That's a lot of recklessness there. But nevertheless, it's great imagery, as he says that when the plane crashes, my former life will crash and I can rebuild. So then Oliver Queen kind of knows where he is. Maybe it's like kind of like the razor's edge. Okay, so he's doing a lot of walking. He's feeling really sad. His body language is very defeated. He comes across a monastery. Um, a monk, a beautifully drawn monk. I bet you this monk was based on Denny O'Neal, because Denny O'Neal was a part of a group called, the Catholic Workers, that would, volunteer their labor in times of, kind of great suffering. And I wonder if Neal Adams did that on purpose or not. Nevertheless, whatever, Oliver Queen, he collapses in front of this man in guilt. He feels so ashamed and just torn by this death of a criminal who was trying to kill him. We see Green Lantern here, really beautifully drawn panel. See some modern artwork here, or something that Neal Adams came up as modern artwork. Whatever financial problems Hal Jordan is having, God damn it, he has a great apartment. So anyway, as he's repowering the ring, he flies out into the night to kind of patrol the area to see if he can find any clue to what may have happened to their friend, Oliver Queen. Black Canary has the same idea. However, she's already onto something, and she's noticing a number of shady characters. So she's definitely profiling here, and she knows this doesn't seem right. So then she kind of follows them where they go, and it turns out they're at this secret meeting place at a basement. And Black Canary gets in closer and closer, and she notices one of the people there. And one of the people she notices is a woman, and this woman is the sister of a character she had dealt with earlier in Green Lantern Green Arrow 78, called Joshua. And basically Joshua was Charles Manson. So Green Lantern, Green Arrow 78 is basically those two versus Charles Manson. So that's sort of the tie-in. So the Charles Manson character was killed, but I guess the sister is keeping the legacy going. They're having a secret meeting. Black Canary overhears this stuff, so she's kind of playing a role as a just eavesdropper at this point. She sees that it's a rally of Joshua's sister and her disciples, and it's like a hate speech. She's talking about immigrants and migrants, and says the only solution is to force these people out. However, one of the disciples sees Black Canary. He pushes her to the forefront and saying, "Look what I found." Black Canary just karate chops this guy right in the neck. So bam, no more right artery. She does her karate moves, beautifully drawn. She's like just kicking these guys' asses. However, one of the guys smashes her over the head with a wooden crate, and this is too much for her, and she's just knocked unconscious. So the guys carry her off at the orders of the Hate Queen to the top of the roof. This drawing here is a little it's a little suggestive, I would say. Here's again more beautifully drawn artwork as the Hate Queen orders her minion to toss this woman off the roof, just killing her. However, as she's falling, Green Lantern saves her, and he uses his power beam. And he does something a little extra special. He doesn't just simply use his power beam to catch her. But what catches her is an image of the Green Arrow, the protective Green Arrow, her lover, her friend, her life. And that's holding up the Black Canary. The Hate Queen and the rest of her disciples, they run off. Hal's not impressed with these guys, saying, "Yeah, you're basically acting like animals, causing a stampede." And then he kind of puts them on meat hooks here, and he's saying, "This is a little bit of authoritarian Hal coming out, saying, you guys, you're not even human anymore, you're animals." And then we see again the last two panels, again beautifully drawn. I love this expression with Black Canary as she sees this, the green imagery of her friend, and making her feel just more lost. To me, it's a very human look there. And both of them know that they didn't really come any closer to what they truly want to do, and that's find their friend. And then we find that this is the third part. Coming up is the fate of an archer, and that would be coming out in the next issue, and they're going to be reviewing that next.